Hello everyone! A month ago, I decided that the holiday season wasn't hectic enough already, and gave myself an ambitious reading project to do. In 2023, I challenged myself to read every book I could find that had the word snowbound in the title. It ended up being quite the experience, and if you'd like to see how that journey went down, I recommend checking out the video linked in the description. Some of you who have seen it might be thinking, why on earth would you do this to yourself again? Wasn't the Snowbound Project awful? Well, yes and no. It was insane and stressful, and I consumed some junk, but I also had a ton of fun, and I have fond memories of some of those books, which I may never have read otherwise. So I have been itching to do something like that again, and while the Snowbound Project accidentally ended up having a lot of Christmas-themed books, this time I intentionally went with a Christmas-related word. In addition, I wanted something that would yield a high number of books, but also a variety of genres. I love that with Snowbound, I got romances, but also thrillers, mysteries, survival stories, and a few children's books. For some reason, mistletoe is the first Christmassy word that popped into my head, and I tried it in my library's search engine to see what was out there. Between physical books and ebooks, I found 66 unique titles, including, of course, romances, but also some juvenile fiction, and several mysteries. Ding ding ding, we have a winner! For the record, I don't care diddly squat about mistletoe. We don't decorate with it, I've never been anywhere where it was hanging, I think it's a silly tradition, and a germy one. I did consider Christmas as my word, but that got me hundreds of titles, and I tried sleigh, but that yielded fewer than 10, and half of them were picture books about Santa, and that wasn't gonna work. Thus, I had my objective. Read, or at least check out, every book in my library's regional network that had the word mistletoe in the title. I did make some improvements to the plan. Things were too loosey-goosey with the Snowbound Project, so I established better guidelines. Number 1, I restricted it to only books I could get from the library. That means essentially no internet archive. That's where things went off the rails last time. Number 2, I set a definite deadline. I would only allow this to go on for 1 month. If there was anything I hadn't read by my deadline, so be it. The deadline I chose was December 20th, and then I rolled it back a week so this project wouldn't infringe on family time, and so that if any of you become interested in any of these books, you might have a chance to read them before Christmas. Number 3, I was not going to force myself to read or to finish every single book. This is a high-pressure reading project, but it's not supposed to be torture. So let's see how it went. Without further ado, here are my thoughts on a whole lot of books with the word mistletoe in the title. Alright, I don't exactly remember how we did this before, but I'm gonna dive right in and hopefully we can figure it out. Book number 1 is My Mistletoe Mix-Up by Judy Corey. This was published in 2018. I forgot to make note of how many pages were in the Kindle version, but I know it wasn't many. This is a young adult novella. It's a romance, and it's Ridgewater High number 5. So it's the 5th book in a series. Great way to start out. Here are my notes. When the boy next door, Jace, who the cheerleader main character, named Raven, had a crush on, moves back to town, she's excited to try her luck with him again. But when they're reunited under some mistletoe, she kisses his bad boy twin, Logan, by mistake. But it turns out Logan is not so bad as he used to be. This was a quick 2-hour read, mostly these two teens flirting with each other and her constantly second-guessing things and having a selective memory. But I was surprised by some of the more substantive moments, and it's a cute story with some bonus ice skating and Christmas tree picking. The big miss is that we're told this particular twin was a jerk when they were kids, but we don't see any of that behavior, and she really doesn't share any specific anecdotes. He just seems like a really nice, sweet, playful guy that she's suspicious of for no reason. Book number 2 is Love at Mistletoe Inn by Cindy Kirk. This was published in 2014. It's 126 pages long, another novella, It's a Christian romance, and it is from a series. It was listed as A Year of Weddings 2, number 1. So I guess it's the first in a sequel series? Here are my notes. Hope discovers that she is technically still married to the guy, John, she ran away with on prom night years ago, even though their paperwork was never mailed in. Now John's back in town, and old emotions are rekindled. On the one hand, it's a pleasant romance between two people who have made mistakes that they want to rectify, and the faith element helps ground the more floofy aspects. Unfortunately, this is a ridiculous, far-fetched scenario with a conflict that is extremely forced. I'm going to spoil things a bit here. If you don't want to hear it, just skip ahead a minute or two. She reveals to him that they are legally married, and even though they have barely spoken to each other in years, they immediately go to bed together, which makes getting an annulment impossible, of course, because the book has to happen. It is a Christian fiction, so it's clean. There's nothing. It's very fade to black. It's so fade to black that I wasn't even sure what had happened. And then, her aunt/his foster mother, Verna, hatches a scheme to give them the official wedding they missed out on, and it is so blatantly obvious what she is up to that the fact that neither one of them catches on makes them seem obtuse. As for the mistletoe, it's barely relevant here. The Mistletoe Inn is just what she's calling the house, and actually, most of the story takes place in the fall. But the writing was pretty good, the main characters were developed, and the local shops and restaurants had fun names. Book number 3 is The Mistletoe Bough by Anthony Trollope. This was published in 1883. I read it on my computer. It's a Project Gutenberg thing, and it's more of a short story. It's only 48 pages long, and here's what I had to say about it. Like another Christmassy tale I read by Trollope, it's much ado about nothing. The young lady of the house is upset because her brothers want to put up mistletoe, and the young man she's just broken an engagement with is coming for the holidays. What follows is a little drama where her family and guests deal with this awkward situation. And there's some charming Victorian Christmas stuff in there, and it's amusing how Trollope gently mocks his heroine for her stern sense of pride and decorum and her martyr complex. But there wasn't much to it, and it was only mildly entertaining. The story does neatly open and close with mistletoe, though. Book number 4 is Merry Mistletoe Madness by Dale Meyer. This was published in 2024. It is 198 pages long. It's a cozy mystery, supposedly. It is number 27 in the Lovely Lethal Gardens series, and this is the first book I have encountered that I decided not to finish. I gave it 50 pages, 6 chapters, got 29% in, and decided not to continue. This is number 27 in a series, and you really are just plopped in there. In 50 pages, I think it was actually 52, I never got a firm grip on the main character or her guy, her boyfriend, I don't know. Things that I learned. She's obsessed with solving cold cases, her husband was murdered, she's inheriting millions, and they never celebrated Christmas while they were married. But it seems to me she must have never celebrated Christmas ever in her life before that, because she doesn't know anything. She keeps fretting over what to give her significant other guy as a gift. I have no time frame for any of this, and I don't know what he does for a living. Maybe he's a policeman. If there is any crime or mystery here, it hadn't been introduced yet by the time I gave up. The writing is also pretty poor. It's functional, but it's light on any specific details. Like, she has these pets that she only ever refers to by their names, so I have no idea what kinds of animals they are. And the dialogue just... wasn't good. It lacks logical flow, it's repetitive, and I can't shake the feeling that the main character is a space alien learning how to act human. Book number 5 is The Mistletoe Mystery by Nita Prose. This was published in 2024. I read the hardcover edition, which is 107 pages long, and it is number 2.5 in the Molly the Maid series, so I guess it comes between sequels, or it comes after the second book. I don't know if there is a third book. First of all, the title's misleading. This is another romance novella, the mystery being, is my wonderful boyfriend cheating on me, so I was disappointed about that. I was really wanting to read a mystery, and based on this title, I thought I would get one. And what's really going on here is quite obvious, which made me wonder, is this actually written for children? That sounds mean. This is a follow-up to a book I guess won a bunch of awards titled The Maid. I never heard of it. It features the same protagonist, so again, this is a book where I don't know the person and she isn't really introduced to me. She's a 30-something, awkward, self-described plain Jane type who works as head maid at a fancy hotel. She has a perfect boyfriend, and she spends most of the book reflecting on memories of her deceased grandmother and battling her insecurities. Now, her struggles with fear and anxiety are relatable enough, but she never sounded like a real person to me. I get that she's not supposed to fit in, but I'm not exactly sure why. It could be that she's on the spectrum or something, but it's never explained. There's never any hint of that, except that she doesn't talk like other people. She uses big words. She's dropping French expressions and these corny, preachy aphorisms all the time, which just makes her irritating. And the other thing is that she takes everything that others say literally, which often gets her into trouble, but not in a funny Amelia Bedelia kind of way. It's more just a frustrating thing. But I don't know if I'm supposed to interpret this as someone who's on the spectrum or not. If the author had just dropped a hint or something early on. So I felt like I was really at a disadvantage, not having any clue what was going on with this woman. But other than that, it just wasn't a very interesting story. I didn't find it particularly compelling in the writing department. I was bored. It does have the ingredients to be a cute little story, and it has a couple nods to The Gift of the Magi, but I didn't think it was very good. Book number 6 is Mistletoe Murder by Karen McInerney. This was published in 2017. I read the paperback, which is 210 pages long. This is Dewberry Farm number 4, and it is a cozy mystery, and it really is a mystery. Finally! This is part of a series, but it didn't take long to get my bearings, thank goodness, and the mystery does become the focus, with plenty of suspects and motives, so I was satisfied at last. It is a cozy mystery, so there's a lot of extra things, chit-chatting, relationship stuff, knitting, baking, farming. The only thing, though, that put me off was the main character, Lucy's, approach to detective work. She has a tendency to show up and start asking probing questions, and I don't care how many baked goods or homemade candles and soaps she brings, it comes across as nosy and crude. Lucy was an investigative reporter before she moved to this little homestead in Texas, so that's how she operates. The thing is, most of the grieving relatives that she does this to don't know that, and if they did, they'd never let her in the door. But still, I liked this one, I flew through it, and it was more mentally stimulating than most of the previous 5 books. Book number 7 is His Mistletoe Bride by Vanessa Kelly. This was published in 2012. It's 391 pages long, which makes it one of the longer books in this whole collection. And it's number 4 in the Stanton Family series. It is a historical romance, and I did not read it. I had my suspicions, given that the lady on the cover looks like her dress is about to fall off, and also it has the tagline, "This holiday, seduction is the sweetest gift." So I opened to a random page in the middle, and lo and behold, it happened to be the beginning of a raunchy, purple prosy, 2-chapter-long sex scene. And not only could I tell at a glance that it was too descriptive for my taste, I also saw some very unsexy dialogue between the childlike bride and her new masterful husband. Ick. I'm skipping this one. Book number 8 is 10 Things I Hate About Mistletoe by Cody Hall. This was published in 2024. It's 287 pages long. It's a romance. It's the first in a series called Falling in Mistletoe, Mistletoe being the name of the town. And I decided not to read it. A couple chapters in, there were things that put me off. The tone, some of the language, the main character. I started jumping ahead, and it didn't get more appealing. It's one of those, it was all big misunderstanding plots, and later in the book I found a very explicit scene. So this is one of those books that has a cutesy, cartoonish, YA-looking cover, but very graphic content on the inside. I hate that trend in publishing right now. So I said, nah. Book number 9 is Balder and the Mistletoe, A Myth of the Vikings. This is a retelling of a tale from Norse mythology, penned by Margaret Hodges, illustrated by Jerry Hoover. This was published in 1974. It's 32 pages long. It is a children's picture book. I don't think that I had heard the myth of Balder before. Maybe you were familiar with it. Pretty much all I know of Norse mythology I got from the Thor movies. Balder is the most loved, most beautiful god in Asgard, and Loki, the god of mischief, driven by envy, devises a plot to take him down. It's an interesting picture book. It's got some cool illustrations, a very 70s style. We've got some books in our collection that could have been done by the same artist. There was one that I found especially spooky. Here it is. Clearly, show and tell is not my forte. I thought it was an okay book. I'm not sure how appealing it would be to kids these days. Book number 10 is Mistletoe, Fact and Folklore by Gray Johnson Poole, illustrated by Melissa Meredith. This was published in 1976. It's 63 pages long, and it is a book to educate young readers about mistletoe. And maybe I should have read it first, since the truth is I probably wouldn't recognize mistletoe if I encountered it in the wild. But this book is pretty dry and dull. I didn't even read the whole thing, so I can't imagine kids being engaged by it, although you could use it to lull them to sleep at night. One of the more interesting things is that it includes the myth of Balder. I read this right on the heels of reading the other book, so I was able to do some compare and contrast. This retelling is only a few paragraphs long, but it does have some striking variations. Sadly, I believe that this is my only non-fiction mistletoe book out of 60 titles. The Snowbound Project had much more variety. Book number 11 is Mine Under the Mistletoe by Kat Latham. This was published in 2013, and officially, I guess, it's 77 pages long. I had to read it on the computer instead of on the Kindle, and with my settings, it was 150 pages long, but it is a novella. Here are my notes. A school teacher from San Diego, Ashley, does a house swap so she can finally spend Christmas in London. But the British guy, Ollie, she's renting from, shows up in the middle of the night when his flight is cancelled due to bad weather. Stuck in the house together, sparks fly, but they both have troubled hearts that need healing. For the most part, I liked this one. The writing is creative and fun, the point of view goes back and forth between the two characters, and they each have distinct voices. It's humorous, which pulled me in at the start and kept me going even when the book turned out to be more zesty than I really prefer. I do think it could have been just as good if it had been less explicit, and also the crisis moment near the end was predictable and cliché. But it was an enjoyable story, and its serious moments were sincere and didn't feel out of place. Book number 12 is A Gentleman Under the Mistletoe by Grace Burrows. This was published in 2024, our fourth 2024 publication, and it's 272 pages long. It's not historical fiction, it's not historical romance, historical mystery. It is number 7 in the Lord Julian Mysteries series, and here's another one where I only read the first couple chapters. It seems okay, but it is very drawn out and overwritten. I wasn't enjoying the process of reading it. I am at a disadvantage not knowing the characters and their relationships. I do think that there's sufficient information for you to follow along and enjoy what's happening, but probably not as much as you could if you already knew them. The tone is pretty heavy and melancholy for a Christmas-themed book. That is not an indictment in and of itself. I think it has to do with what this main character has been through, but again, I don't know him, so it just seemed like kind of a downer, and the mystery, which hadn't yet reared its head by the time I stopped reading, is who is the mysterious person who's making generous donations in town. Not exactly the kind of mystery that I find interesting. Under normal circumstances, I might press a little further with this, but I have limited time and a lot of titles to check out, and this just isn't ringing my bells, so I'm moving on. Book number 13 is A Cowboy Under the Mistletoe by Jessica Clare. This was published in 2019. It's 296 pages long. It is technically number 3 in the Wyoming Cowboy series, but I'm sure it works as a standalone. That's how it is with a lot of these romance series. I decided not to read this one. I did a quick preview, flipping through to check the content, and there seems to only be the one scene, but it is lengthy and very, very explicit. So I'm going to skip this one too. Which is great, because I'm just flying through this list. I know that some people will have issues with my opinions and my preferences, but they are my opinions, my preferences, my convictions, and if there's a certain kind of content that I don't want to read, then I have the freedom to avoid it. If those are the only books that you're interested in reading, well, you can do your own project and post your own video and talk about how awesome you think these books are. I like a good romance, but despite what TikTok might tell you, there are lots of girls and women out there who are not interested in reading softcore porn. Not that that's what this book is. I think that this book actually has a lot of, I don't know, I suspect it has quite a bit of substance to it. But it seems that even the relatively tame romance novels feel they need to deliver at least one very heated and descriptive scene before the book is over. I'm not looking for that. Book number 14 is Moonlight and Mistletoe by Maggie Davis. This was published in 1993, and it's only 174 pages long. When two sisters run afoul of the law while fleeing their disreputable Appalachian relatives, the cranky North Georgian sheriff reluctantly lets them stay in his home over the holidays. This is kind of a crime comedy. There are a lot of hijinks that ensue, but it's also a romance, and one that felt pretty squicky since the girl, named Scarlett O'Hara Scraggs, is only 19, and the hero turns out to be the sheriff, who's around 30. The wacky finale where everything goes crazy all at once was fun, and I really liked the little sister, Farrah Fawcett Scraggs, who, thanks to her family's criminal background, is an expert lockpicker. But I had mixed feelings about this one. There were parts I liked, but other parts that I just felt like, no, this is not good. I'm gonna have a hard time remembering it also, partly because the title doesn't refer to anything specific in the book, and also a couple books from here, there's another one called Moonlight and Mistletoe, and the cover is equally vague and irrelevant. It doesn't fit this book at all. Book number 15 is The Mistletoe Murder by P.D. James. This was originally published in 1991, and then it came out in this short story collection in 2016. It is a short story, obviously. A young World War II widow is invited to spend the holiday with her estranged grandmother. Two others make up the party, and someone ends up dead. This was okay. It is brief, of course, and I've never really enjoyed murder mysteries in short story format. It does have some of the most sophisticated writing of any of the books on this list, and it has a bold resolution, but I didn't care much for the story itself. I've never gotten into P.D. James, though. Book number 16 is the other one, titled Moonlight and Mistletoe by Louise Allen. This was published in 2006, and it's 304 pages long. In this Regency mystery romance, an unmarried woman, Hester, seeking refuge from scandal in the country, purchases an abandoned property, but it quickly becomes evident that someone wants to scare her away. I liked this well enough. In some ways it reminded me of a Georgette Heyer novel, specifically, I think, The Unknown Ajax, which actually diminished some of the suspense for me, as I felt I had a pretty good idea what was going on, and for a period I was waiting for the heroine and her hero, an earl named Guy, to catch on. The romance was okay, kinda spicy. I never felt fully convinced of their chemistry. I was told that they had great chemistry, but I didn't really feel it myself. And the conflict between them was another thing that seemed dragged out. As for the mistletoe, Christmas doesn't even get mentioned until page 181, and then mistletoe only appears briefly on the last page, and it's just like an unimportant thing. So, this was title clickbait. Book number 17 is Meddling with Mistletoe by Liz Johnson. This was published in 2024, it's 256 pages long, and it's Red Door Inn romance number 1. Whitney, a girl who bakes pies for a farmer's market on Prince Edward Island, agrees to help an older woman play matchmaker for her sad accountant nephew Daniel in exchange for tuition to culinary school. But this agreement doesn't sit well with Whitney, especially when Daniel seems more interested in her. This was a pleasant romance, although it was rife with frustrations and predictable predicaments. This is why I don't read or watch contemporary romance on a regular basis. Things typically happen in that genre that kind of annoy me. Like here, we've got matchmaking, lack of communication, a statement overheard and misunderstood, and deception. Each time I could see one of these tropes coming, I was like, ugh, no. That said, I did like the two main characters. They complemented each other nicely, and they had cute moments, and I cared about them getting together. It was also refreshingly wholesome. Book number 18 is Bride of the Mistletoe by James Lane Allen. This was published in 1909, and it's not even that long. It's only 132 pages, but I could not get into it. I tried, but I was getting nowhere with it, so I eventually let it go. Maybe someone will tell me I missed out on something amazing, or chastise me for not putting in more effort. I don't care. Book number 19 is Mistletoe, A Christmas Story by Tad Hills. This was published in 2020, and it is a children's picture book, far and away the best of the children's books in this collection. I don't know if you can see, but there is sparkles in the title and in the snow clumped on the wreath and on the door. And then here's the back. Cute. Here's what I wrote. A mouse named Mistletoe. Let me show you a picture here as we go along. A mouse named Mistletoe wants to walk in the snow with her elephant friend Norwell. But Norwell likes to be warm. So she decides to knit him something cozy for Christmas. I loved this. It's a sweet story with a little lesson in there about gift giving and being industrious, paired with some adorable illustrations. The characters are appealing, and the reveal of Norwell wearing his gift on the last page made me laugh out loud because I wasn't expecting it to look like this. Plus, it's a nice big book. I measured it. It's just under 11.5 inches by 9.5 inches. And it's got nice big font and smooth pages, so it feels good in your hands. So in just about every way, this one's a winner. Book number 20 is A Cat Under the Mistletoe by Lydia Adamson. This was published in 1996. It's 227 pages long, and it's Alice Nestleton Mystery number 12. After an out-of-work actress, who is also a part-time cat sitter and amateur detective, discovers the murdered corpse of a feline psychiatrist, she endeavors to find the killer on her own. I had a surprisingly good time with this. Surprising because it falls in the middle of a series I never heard of, and because it has a low Goodreads rating. But the writing is humorous, with wacky characters and wacky dialogue. The story features a parade of cats with distinct personalities, and many of them are crazy, which is understandable given the victim's profession. It did go on a smidge too long. I know it's only 227 pages, but I found myself reaching a point of apathy before it was over. And when the murderer was revealed, I was like, who? There was also no mistletoe here, and no cat under said mistletoe, so again, what was up with the title? I feel clickbaited, but I don't mind too much because I did find most of the book very entertaining. Book number 21 is The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong. This was published in 2021, and it's 185 pages-ish. I was looking at it on the computer, so numbers vary. It's a romance. A young woman working at a little bookshop loathes her co-worker even as she can't stop ogling him, and she's sure that he hates her just as much, but it is plain to the reader that he doesn't. There's probably more to it than that, but I stopped after chapter 1. There was just too much about this that put me off from the beginning. Everything was so obvious, chirpy, typical. Every thought and action is tediously drawn out, and it reads very juvenile, but also sexy. And it's like, okay, you can be sexy, but don't be so childish at the same time. That makes it feel ugh. It does seem to be a kind of homage to It's a Wonderful Life, with some You've Got Mail and The Hating Game thrown in. I don't know how far that homage really extends. It could just be making some references. This could be cute and funny if it was written differently. Book number 22 is Holly and Mistletoe by Susan Mallory. This was published in 1996. I looked at it on the computer. Allegedly, it's 256 pages long. I don't know how it could be that long. It's a romance, Hometown Heartbreakers number 5. A firefighter gets injured rescuing a cat named Mistletoe. The cat's naive owner, Holly, is eager to express her mushy gratitude. Meanwhile, the guy is hot, and he finds her hot. Maybe there's more substance later on. I don't know. I only read a chapter or two. She sounds like a goose, and he sounds like a jerk. I don't like the quality of the writing, and the content is tedious and predictable and cliche, so I'm out. Book number 23 is The Mistletoe Promise by Richard Paul Evans. This was published in 2014. It's 251 pages long, but it's a very quick read. It's a romance. It's Mistletoe number 1. Richard Paul Evans apparently is a prolific writer of Christmas-themed novels, and he has a trilogy of books with Mistletoe in the title. I will be reading books 2 and 3 later on. Apparently they're not related to each other. They're all standalone books. They just have that in common. Elise is approached by a lawyer, Nicholas, who proposes they pretend to date each other for 2 months until Christmas Eve. Warily, she accepts, but a terrible secret from her past threatens to ruin the plan. When the fake relationship plot was revealed a couple pages in, I had misgivings because the writing has a serious tone that seemed a weird fit for that trope. Plus, the guy's introduction made him seem a little creepy, but I let it cook, and it turned out to be very good. This has a nice balance of depth and light-handed humor. The romance is appealing, and I must say, I noted that this guy, with significantly less description of his body, seemed hotter to me than most of these other male leads. Probably because the author allowed me the freedom to picture him how I wanted, instead of telling me over and over again that he was this massive lunk with hard, ropey, rippling muscles. Ugh, I'm so tired of these cookie-cutter heroes in these books that just don't sound attractive to me at all. Their characters might be attractive, but the way these women just drool all over these ridiculous-sounding men... Despite my initial assumptions, this was a surprisingly heavy story. When it took a turn, I was shocked, but it also got me hooked. I read the book in one night. It might even have been Thanksgiving night, and it even moved me to tears a couple times. Book number 24 is The Mistletoe Countess by Pepper Basham. This was published in 2021. It's 320 pages long, a little heftier than some others, and it's a romance and a mystery. It turned out to be the first of a series, the Frederick and Grace mystery series. Set in 1913, a marriage of convenience has been arranged between a wealthy American young woman and an impoverished English nobleman, but a complication leads the Earl, Frederick, to marry his intended's younger sister, Gracelyn, instead, even though her lively, imaginative personality is hardly suited to the role of a countess. When I started this, I was very tired, and I struggled through the first 20 pages. I kept finding fault with the writing, and I was going to abandon it. But my mom, for some reason, encouraged me to give it another chance. And I'm glad I did, because I ended up enjoying it. Maybe I needed to get acclimated to the style and the abundance of classic lit references, or maybe I just needed to not read it when I was so sleepy. It does feel lengthy at times. There's a lot to cram in. In the second half, a mystery takes precedence with a possible murder, threats on the Earl's life, rumors of a ghost. But it doesn't skimp on the romance, and that's very good too. It also turned out to be a Christian novel, and well-done Christian fiction. And you might think, oh, so there's not going to be much zippity-doo-dah in the romance department. But the love story was still very romantic and even swoony in some scenes. My biggest complaint was the author's use of the word pearl as a verb. I don't think I've ever heard that before, but she did it 4 times. Book number 25 is Must Love Mistletoe by Christy Ridgway. This was published in 2006. It's 358 pages long, but it does have pretty large font. It's a romance. The heroine, Bailey, named after George, is forced to return home to run her family's Christmas store even though she hates the holiday. Making matters worse, the hot bad boy she dated as a teen, Finn, is also back in town, and he is full of complicated rage. I read the first few chapters of this, and I was liking the writing in those introductory chapters. It was funny and clever. But it also started to get pretty raunchy pretty fast. I could tell the way things were headed early on. If the flashbacks of them as horny teens in Chapter 2 are that racy, you know it's only going to ramp up as the book goes along. So I moved on to the next one. Book number 26 is Mistletoe and Holly by Janet Daly. This was published in 1982. It's 304 pages long, but not really. It's a romance. We got another Scrooge here. When city slicker Leslie breaks her leg, she retreats to her relative's home in Vermont for a peaceful holiday away. But she finds herself pursued by the hot guy next door, Tag, and his precocious 6-year-old daughter, Holly. This was a shorter read than I expected. The book actually ends on page 203. The last third is all promotional material for other books. So I flew through it, but I didn't like it much. The plot was kind of oversimplified and boring, with just 4 characters, no subplot to speak of. It felt like it was going through the motions, and then in the last couple chapters, the guy got super pushy. Book number 27 is Mistletoe Mine by Emily March. This was published in 2011, and it is part of a series. It is Eternal Springs number 3.5, and that .5 implies that it is the continuation of a love story told in another book, which I have not read, so my reading it doesn't make much sense. I did skim the first 30 pages, and I suppose I could get along, but I'm not that impressed with the writing anyway, so I'm gonna skip it. Book number 28 is Mutts and Mistletoe by Natalie Cox. This was published in 2018. It's 310 pages long. It's a British novel. After the apartment above her explodes and she gets injured, Charlie goes to stay with a cousin at her dog kennel in the country for a couple weeks as she recovers and has no place to live. When the cousin abruptly decides to take a trip, Charlie, who is not a dog person, agrees to hold the fort, and things get nutty. This book was very funny, one of the funniest of this whole collection, I would say. I chortled a lot, it has some adult humor, and can be irreverent at times. It is obliquely a romance. That's not the focus, though, and for much of it, I wasn't sure if Cal, the handsome, disapproving vet with blue eyes and hot forearms, was going to turn out to be a love interest or not. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Charlie, is a pretty ridiculous person. She is impulsive and doesn't exercise great judgment, but she's lovable anyway, and even though I'm not a dog person either, I really enjoyed this. Now that I think of it, where was the mistletoe? Did I miss that? Book number 29 is The Mistletoe Inn by Richard Paul Evans. This was published in 2015. It's 300 pages long. It's Mistletoe number 2. After learning of her father's cancer diagnosis, Kim, an aspiring novelist, reluctantly attends the writers' conference he's bought her a ticket to. The keynote speaker is the elusive author who inspired her to write. But while waiting for him to maybe show up, she meets a nice guy named Zeke instead. This was not as good as the first one. It has emotional depth, and some of the dialogue is fun, but there's something lacking all around. The romance is only so-so. I predicted the plot twist way early on, but mostly it's just depressing. More so than the Mistletoe promise. There's stuff with the dad, stuff with the mom, stuff with past relationships, stuff with people at work, and on top of that, the protagonist takes criticism of her book very badly. So internally, she's in a miserable state for a lot of it. And now I'm wondering, is that this guy's MO? Does Richard Paul Evans just write sad Christmas romances? If so, I'm no longer looking forward to Mistletoe number 3, but I will read it. Mostly I'm curious to see if it also lists every fancy schmancy dish that the characters are served, and if it also has the hot rich guy whisk the heroine away for a quick trip to Manhattan. There is a valid reason why that happens in both books, but I found it kind of absurd and kind of lazy. It's like, so you made an excuse for you to be repetitive. Book number 30 is Kissing Under the Mistletoe by Marina Adair. This is one of 2 books on the list titled Kissing Under the Mistletoe. This was published in 2012. It's 293 pages long. It's St. Helena Vineyard number 1. Based on the blurb on the back, this is one of those they hate each other but also find each other super hot stories. It's between a single mom with a 6-year-old daughter named Holly, another one, and a guy who, for some reason, wants her to leave the area. It's set in Napa Valley, so I imagine there's a lot of festive winery activities. I flipped through this and I decided to skip it. It wasn't one of those where I flip open to a random page and it's like, oh my goodness! But there was some stuff, not as randy as some others, but more than my speed, and just in general, it's not grabbing me. But here's the deal. I have a week and a half left in this project, and another 25 to 30 books to check out. So I've got to knuckle down and read like crazy the ones I am interested in, and be ruthless with the ones that I don't really care much about. I just came back from the library with 15 more books. Am I overwhelmed? Absolutely. But I did decide to flip through all of them and do a quick sex check. Basically, if I open the book to 3 random places, and on any one of those random places there is an explicit sex scene beginning or in progress, and I mean explicit, then I'm putting it aside. It ain't for me. This process allowed me to rule out book number 31, The Mistletoe Kisser by Lucy Score, which was published in 2020 and is 293 pages long. It's Blue Moon number 8. This one's very explicit. And book number 32, Puppy Love at Mistletoe Junction by Shannon Richard. This was published in 2024. It's 339 pages long, and apparently it's Cruikshank number 2. This one seems a bit less explicit in terms of language, pornographic language, but it is happening quite early in the book, which is another thing that puts me off. And I'm surprised. Based on the title and the cover, I thought that this would be one of the cutesy, innocent ones. Book number 33 is Mistletoe, Merriment, and Murder by Sarah Rosette. This was published in 2012. It's 283 pages long. It's a mystery. I assumed the series was the Ellie Avery mysteries, but it's a Mom's Own mystery, number 7. Ellie Avery is a professional organizer and one of a tight community of military wives. They're all busy preparing for the holidays, while Ellie is trying to hold on to her clients when competition comes to town. When she discovers the dead body of her business rival's sister, Ellie becomes implicated in the murder. She must unmask the real killer and prove her innocence to the skeptical police. This is a really fun cover. I like the art here. It's very quirky, but it's not a true reflection of the content, which is fairly serious and intense. The protagonist keeps incriminating herself by mistake, and there's a genuine threat of danger at times. There is also a heavy dose of filler, at least I considered it filler, but overall, I thought the book, while overly descriptive in some passages, was pretty good. There's no mistletoe here, so there's that, but many of the chapters end with tips on how to make your holidays less stressful. That was interesting. I could give you a tip. Don't decide to read 50 plus books. Book number 34 is Mistletoe and Murder by Robin Stevens. This was published in 2016. It's 336 pages long, fairly large font. It's a juvenile mystery. It's Murder Most Unladylike number 5. I was surprised when I looked it up and saw that that was the name of the series, because I thought it says a Wells and Wong mystery, so I figured Wells and Wong mystery number 5. But okay, Daisy Wells and Hazel Wong, the narrator, are amateur detectives, about 14 years old. They go to spend the holiday at Cambridge College and uncover a crime. This was okay, better than I thought it would be. Considering that it's essentially juvenile fiction, I was surprised that the mystery involved a murder, and actually 2 murders. Hazel Wong is a likable girl. Daisy is not. Daisy is a twit. She's full of herself. She's not a true friend. They both think of themselves as very grown up, but it's one of those things where the more they insist on their maturity, the more childish they seem. There's also a strong undercurrent of racism, reflecting national prejudices of the time, this being set in England, 1935. And if I were distributing points, I would give this one a bonus point for using poisonous mistletoe berries as a potential murder weapon. Book number 35 is Kissing Under the Mistletoe by Bella Andre. This is the other book with that title. This was published in 2013. It's 400 pages long. It's a romance. The Sullivans, number 9. Sparks fly between one of the world's top models, Mary, and an engineer, Jack, who needs an ad campaign that will lend sex appeal to his new invention. Turns out this entry in the series is about how the parents met and fell in love. And it's great if you know them, but I don't, and I was pretty bored through a lot of the book. It started out okay, but I kept expecting something of more substance to happen. Conflicts did materialize, but they were quickly smoothed over, and then it was back to the bedroom. And less than halfway through, I was looking at the progress bar on the Kindle, and I was like, how can there be another half of the book to go? The author did manage to squeeze in an extraordinary number of love scenes, which just hovered on the edge of over-descriptive. It was nothing like some of the books that have come through here, but my biggest complaint is that this book just goes on forever. They get engaged, and then they get married, and I was like, surely this is the end, but we had to have another spicy scene thrown in, and then another, and I couldn't believe it when the author then took us through the first year of their marriage, month by month. I was like, end already! Book number 36 is The Mistletoe Secret by Richard Paul Evans. This was published in 2016. It's 306 pages long. It's romance. It's Mistletoe, number 3. A lonely divorcee, Alex, at the behest of his friends, takes a stab at online dating. But when he stumbles across the blog of an anonymous lonely woman whose writing echoes the cries of his own heart, he endeavors to track her down. It was a nice change to have a mistletoe book written by a man that's almost entirely from a man's point of view. But this was awful. It's another Christmas romance that's heavy on misery, so Richard Paul Evans is consistent. But there are moments of levity, just like in the other two books. There's witty banter, funny observations. I especially liked the guy's two friends. They were great. And if you're curious, there are no shopping sprees in Manhattan here, and while there are fancy dishes name-dropped, there aren't as many. No, the thing I hated was the premise and basically every decision the protagonist makes. I shouldn't have to spell this out, but him getting attached to this blogger and using a couple things that she says to figure out her location, and then going there, and then getting a list of names, possible people, and then going door to door and looking for her, is not romantic. It's creepy. It's loathsome. I hate this. At least many of the people he tells about his mission have this same reaction, but it doesn't deter him. He's told that it's creepy, that it's stalkerish, that it's disturbing. He goes through with it anyway. Okay. I was steamed up about this, and I almost abandoned the book, but I slept on it, I pushed a little further, and things started to get better. And then he does something so stupid, and I was like, ugh! What a jerk! But I kept reading, and unrealistically, this lucky guy gets out of this dumb mess he made, only to follow it up a little while later with another stupid mistake. Which, honestly, it was something that I feel like was just manufactured by the author to have one last conflict. One big conflict at the end. And it was just so... Ugh! So this might win the prize for most infuriating mistletoe book that I've read. The only reason I finished it was so that I could justify this review. Book Book number 37 is Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe by Melissa de la Cruz. This was published in 2017. It's 225 pages long. It's a romance. A vague retelling of the Jane Austen novel where heroine Darcy Fitzwilliam, fabulously rich and emphatically single, goes home for Christmas and is dismayed by her attraction to an old enemy, Luke Bennett. This isn't the only book on this list that has been made into a Hallmark movie, but it is the only one where I have seen the movie. I'm pretty sure I did a mini review of it, though I have zero recollection of what I thought. I think I was underwhelmed, though, and the same goes for the book, which I abandoned around 30%. I found the characters annoying, the story, romance, and writing mediocre. Honestly, there were parts of it where I just thought, that's stupid, and, it has pretty much nothing in common with Pride and Prejudice. Okay, so you took a few character traits. So you took some names and tweaked them around a bit. Just write your own story. I think calling it Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe, honestly, was probably a cash grab. But the downside is that you brought in a whole bunch of people who read your book thinking they were going to get something that was kind of similar to the book that they've loved, and they got this instead. And the consequence is that the average rating of this book on Goodreads is 2.64, which is abysmal. Book number 38 is Mistletoe, Moussaka, and Murder by Tina Cashian. This was published in 2020. It's 328 pages long. Kebab Kitchen Mystery Number 5. While managing her family's Mediterranean restaurant on the Jersey Shore and trying to plan her wedding, Lucy endeavors to solve the murder of a fellow business owner that occurred during a polar plunge for charity. I've been looking forward to this one merely because the title made me think of Hades' line from Disney's Hercules, I haven't gotten this choked up since I got a hunk of moussaka caught in my throat. At first, I thought it was taking too long to get to the mystery, with too many extraneous details. A common complaint I have with cozy mysteries. But then I realized that some of this stuff was relevant, so that was a relief. And I liked this one. It's a good mystery, and even though I never met these characters before, I even found their overarching storyline interesting. This one also has a few recipes at the end, including one for the titular moussaka, which I probably will not ever make because I don't think I would like it. Book number 39 is Mistletoe and Mr. Right by Sarah Morgenthaler. This was published in 2020. It's 400 pages long. It's a romance. Moose Springs, Alaska, number 2. Lana, fashionable representative of a big business family, is buying up properties in Moose Springs, Alaska. She loves the small town, but the locals don't love her, and in an effort to win them over, she announces she's going to try to capture the infamous psychotic moose that keeps destroying their Christmas displays. In the meantime, she is slowly falling in love with Rick, the shy owner of a pool hall. I stopped reading this at about 33%. I like it well enough. The writing is humorous, the male love interest is appealing, Lana sounds like a female Mr. Potter but isn't, and there are funny animal anecdotes. But it was taking way too long to get anywhere. I felt like I had been reading for hours and barely made a dent. It hadn't really been hours, but you know what I mean. There are drawn-out conversations about the business that I don't care about, and if there's a wacky moose chase, as advertised, it must be in the second half. If I had all the time in the world, I might be persuaded to press on, but I don't have all the time, and I've got other books to check out, so I'm moving forward. Book number 40 is A Donkey Called Mistletoe by Helen Peters, illustrated by Ellie Snowden. This was published in 2020 or 2021. It's 160 pages long. Jasmine Green rescues number 10. Jasmine has a tendency to collect animals. When she wants to take in a donkey whose owner is going into assisted living, her exasperated parents say no, we can't afford it and we don't have space, but Jasmine has a plan to convince them. This is a chapter book, probably second or third grade reading level, and every few pages there's a charming illustration. Aside from Jasmine's younger brother, who is an infuriating brat, This is a nice story with a chaotic Christmas pageant and a few truly touching moments between the old man and his donkey and an autistic little boy. Book number 41 is Mistletoe and Murder by Carola Dunn. This was published in 2002. It's 256 pages long. Daisy Dalrymple number 11. It's a mystery. Set in 1923, Daisy travels to a noble house in Cornwall to write an article. Its absent owner allows her and her family to join his poor relations who live there for the holidays, which is an odd arrangement that gets even stranger when one of the guests turns up dead and Daisy's policeman husband is forced to investigate. It was harder to get my bearings here, being the 11th in a series. I struggled to figure out what the relationships were and how much of the backstory I needed to know. We've got a mother and a mother-in-law and a stepdaughter and a nephew, and I was like, who are these people and how old are they? And blah. Perseverance was rewarded, though, because this ended up being a pretty good mystery. It's reminiscent, I would say, of the golden age of mysteries with the old Cornish estate and the awkward mix of people staying together and celebrating Christmas with traditional British trappings. Mistletoe is mentioned but briefly as a heathen decoration, but despite that, this was a relatively enjoyable read. Book number 42 is Mistletoe Murder by Leslie Meyer. This was published in 1993. It's 222 pages long. It's a cozy mystery. Lucy Stone number 1. Lucy takes calls for a mail-order catalog. Late one night, she steps outside for a break and finds the company's owner dead in his car, a murder made to look like a suicide. I only read 4 chapters of this. Maybe there's an interesting mystery here, but so far it's mostly baking cookies, figuring out what to get people for Christmas, and a whole lot of gossip. Pretty boring. Also, I saw on the copyright page that this was previously published as mail-order murder, so it's not even a real mistletoe book. Book number 43 is Meet Me Under the Mistletoe by Jenny Bayliss. This was published in 2022. It's 429 pages long. It's a romance. British used bookshop owner Nori reluctantly joins her school friends for a reunion getaway at a place in the country, where she encounters an old acquaintance. This seemed to be in high demand within my library network, so I thought it might be a good one. But I got through the first chapter, 14 pages, and tossed it aside. I just didn't like anything about it. And I don't want to spend another 400 plus pages and precious reading hours with these people. Book number 44 is The Mischief of the Mistletoe by Lauren Willig. This was published in 2010. It's 326 pages long. It's Pink Carnation number 7. Set in Bath, 1803, Arabella is an impoverished young lady who has taken a job teaching at an elite girls' school, only to find herself in the midst of clandestine entanglements with Plum Pudding and Bonaparte's spies, her unlikely confidant, a genial but goofy gentleman commonly known as Turnip. I'll let you digest that for a second. The first couple pages made me wary because Jane Austen is immediately introduced not just as a character in the novel, but as a good friend of the heroine. I'm not into that kind of thing. However, as I soon figured out, Austen's appearances are brief and tastefully done, with dialogue that sounds natural and is consistent with the way she writes. With that hurdle passed, I began to really enjoy the book. The dedication reads, "For all of you who asked for a book about Turnip." So I gather he was a side character in previous novels, and I can see why he was popular. He is extremely likable, and the things he says and does are hilarious. To my fellow Georgette Hare fans, he reminded me of the Honorable Ferdy Fakenham in Friday's Child. I'm not sure if this should be categorized as a mystery, since there are more shades of the Scarlet Pimpernel, but regardless, it's an engaging story. The 2 main characters are endearing. I love the way they communicate, and the romance is very pleasant. And there were a couple extremely funny parts. There are little anachronisms sprinkled throughout, which I didn't mind. They're used to humorous effect. And there's There's a nativity play scene that had me cackling. So, I guess this takes the place of the other one, Mutts and Mistletoe, as the funniest mistletoe book. Book number 45 is The Trouble with Mistletoe by Jill Shalvis. This was published in 2016. It's 361 pages long, a romance, Heartbreaker Bay number 2. Pet shop owner Willa has sworn off men at the ripe old age of 27, and then she finds herself face to face with Keen, the guy who stood her up at a Sadie Hawkins dance 10 years ago. She hates his guts, but he's super hot. When I first flipped through this one for the raunchy sex check, it passed, but it turns out I just didn't land on any of those pages. I already wasn't feeling the writing, there's some awkward phrasing, but then there were a number of things in the first 20 pages that made me think, this sounds like the kind of book that'll have at least 2 explicit scenes in it. And sure enough, I flipped through it again, and I found them! So we're moving on from this one. Book number 46 is Mistletoe Season by Michelle Major. This was published in 2021. It's 303 pages long. The Carolina Girls, number 2. This is a romance between Angie, a single mom struggling to juggle her catering business and her family's Italian restaurant while caring for her mother, and Gabe, a moody veteran who owns a flower shop. Both of them have disliked each other since high school, but presumably they're going to start feeling attracted to each other and fall in love. I don't know. I tried to read this a few times, and now I've got to admit it's just not happening. The writing is fine, but there's something kind of boring about it. Plus, at least the way it starts, it's very... There's a pervasive melancholy, a slightly bitter tone, a heaviness beyond the enmity between the protagonists, and I'm just not feeling another mistletoe downer. Book number 47 is Murder Under the Mistletoe by Sherry Lynn. This was published in 2023. It's 277 pages long, a cozy, mainly murder mystery number 2. Landscape and garden business owner Kinsley has embraced the task of decorating her harbor town in Maine for the holidays. This rubs somebody's nose the wrong way, a source of minor concern for her until that somebody turns up dead and Kinsley becomes a suspect. I read the first 5 chapters, which amounts to 50 pages, and maybe it gets better after the body is found, but up to this point, the writing is not very convincing. It sounds sophomoric. It's just not very good. The characters and the dialogue both lack a ring of authenticity, and I'm not finding the story or the telling of it interesting enough to press on. Book number 49 is Mistletoe and Mayhem by Kate Kingsbury. This was published in 2010. It's 292 pages long, a cozy mystery, Pennyfoot Hotel number 18. Cecily, owner of the Pennyfoot Country Club, is corralling her staff and preparing for her busiest season when a footman turns up dead and a housemaid goes missing. This isn't the first time disaster has come to the Pennyfoot for the holidays, nor will it be the first time that Cecily attempts to track down a killer herself. I am not sure what time period we're in. The word Edwardian came up once. They have a telephone. Some people are still driving horses, while others have adopted cars. So I could make an educated guess, but there is no explicitly stated year. Either way, there is definitely an upstairs-downstairs vibe, with the perspective jumping from Cecily to various housemaids and the cook. The mystery is decent, with plenty of suspects, though not much discussion of possible motives, and it coincides with a string of murders that have been happening in London, which confuses things. In addition, there's a supernatural element where Cecily's friend gets visions which offer clues at convenient moments. And truth be told, this touch of fantasy sent me off on a wild goose chase where I became convinced that the mysterious, churlish man staying in room 9 was going to turn out to be a werewolf. I thought that would be a pretty fun twist, but sad to say, he was not. And I was way off base. Book number 50 is Mistletoe Miracles by Jodie Thomas. This was published in 2018. It's 361 pages long. It's a romance. It's technically Ransom Canyon number 7. This one's a little different in format. as there are 3 love stories unfolding at once, all based in a Texas town fittingly named Crossroads. Now, at this late stage, I am trying to enter speed read mode, but this book made that difficult because all 3 stories were engaging. Ah! That's not a bad problem to have, but I did feel like, oh, come on, stop being so interesting. But it's good. The pacing and the balance made it so that I never felt like one story was neglected or unnecessarily dragged out. Quick rundown of the 3 plots. There's Griffin, who is searching for a wealthy, independent woman to marry in order to save his ranch. There's Jackson, a hermit whose rescue of a dog leads him to a victim of abuse. And there's Wyatt, an army captain on leave, who is mistaken for a schoolteacher's fictional husband. I surmise that the Griffin storyline was the primary one. That's the one we start with and end with, and I think there might have been more chapters with that, so it felt slightly more dominant, but like I said, each one is handled pretty fairly. I think I liked the Jackson one best, but they were all pretty good. Book number 50 is Mistletoe and Juno by Dahlia Rose. This was published in 2021. It's 267 pages long. The font is fairly large. It's a romance. Danny, a rising influencer from New York, pulls away from her hectic life to visit her best friend, her pregnant best friend, in Juneau, where she finds herself drawn to Declan, an Army veteran turned Alaska State Trooper. The attraction is mutual, but they come from wildly different worlds. This was a nice story. I liked it. It was predictable at times, and it reminded me a lot of another book that I read a few years ago. And it could also use a little proofreading. There were some awkward mistakes in here. But it's appealing, and the romance is wholesome with some good side characters, which is not something you can count on in all of these books. Sometimes you're lucky if there are 2 characters besides the main couple. But there were a lot of people in this book, and there was a lot of cultural stuff, so that was good. This was actually published by Hallmark. I didn't know that they printed books. And it has a recipe for super simple, amazing chocolate cake at the end. Book number 51 is Murder on Mistletoe Lane by Clara McKenna. This was published in 2023. It's 293 pages long. It's a mystery. I don't think that it's a cozy mystery. Didn't feel very cozy to me. It's Stella and Lindy Mystery number 5. It's another story about a rich Southern American girl who has saved a British nobleman's family from poverty, and they act totally ungrateful. This one is undoubtedly Edwardian, and the title promises a murder, but I bailed after 6 chapters, 45 pages, before a body could turn up. There's a big emphasis on the culture clash. Stella is a fish out of water, and everyone's constantly reminding her of this. Gentry and servants alike treat her like dirt. It's very, I'll say cliche. Obviously that happened. That was a real thing. That's a real attitude that British people had, may even still have, toward Americans that were too loud and exuberant and all of that. But I've already read a book that had this. I might have read more than one book, and that other one was more interesting to me than this. There's also a lot of horse talk, which I find dull. The girl's from Kentucky. It makes sense, but I'm not interested. There is a mystery brewing within the first 6 chapters with some missing objects, but I'm not inclined to stick around to see where that goes. I'm disappointed because I really liked the cover art, and I was looking forward to this one. But I'm not feeling the writing, the story, or the characters. Book number 52 is Mrs. Jeffries and the Mistletoe Mix-Up by Emily Brightwell. This was published in 2011. It's 265 pages long. It's a cozy mystery, I guess. It's Mrs. Jeffries number 29. This being the 29th book in a series I've never heard of, I'm way out of the loop here. I gather that there is a Scotland Yard inspector named Witherspoon who holds the record for the most cases solved, but actually it's his middle-aged housekeeper, Mrs. Jeffries, who cracks a lot of the cases for him, with the additional help of his suffragette neighbor, who I guess he's not romantically attached to in any way. It's book 29. If it hasn't happened yet, is it going to happen at all? I guess it's not that kind of series. Also, his cook and whoever else wants to pitch in. I did not read this book. Maybe it's good. I don't know. The murder is committed within just a few pages, and it's surprisingly gruesome, the most violent of any of these Mistletoe mysteries, and the victim was being a jerk, so there was a little bit of satisfaction in that. But there's just too much going on here, too many characters, too many references I don't get, and the writing wasn't really pulling me in. My brain's nearly fried right now, so I don't feel like applying myself to figure it all out. Book number 53 is Mistletoe Man by Susan Wittig Albert. This was published in 2000. It's 294 pages long. Another cozy mystery. China Bales, mystery number 9. China Bales is a former lawyer and an herbalist who has started a tea shop with a friend while also getting accustomed to being married and having a teenage stepson. Her friend starts acting weird, and their mistletoe supplier has gone missing. I read the first 30 pages, and I do appreciate that there's an effort made to explain the backstory to anyone like me who hasn't read books 1 through 8. That was nice. But I still felt distant from this. It just wasn't grabbing me. There were whole paragraphs about nature and herbs that I was skipping. Plus, there were some hints of occultism that I wasn't keen on. I try to avoid that. So I'm setting this one aside, even though flipping through, I think it has some potential to be an interesting mystery, and there's one older woman who insists that she was abducted by aliens, and she talks about it all the time. That does sound entertaining, but this is another one that I'm setting aside. Book number 54 is Christmas on Mistletoe Lane by Annie Raines. This has no connection to book number 51, Murder on Mistletoe Lane. This was published in 2018. It's 314 pages long. It's a romance. Sweetwater Springs number 1. Caitlin's grandparents have bequeathed their rundown bed and breakfast to her and to Mitch, a former Marine who fled town for some reason. Caitlin and Mitch are required to join forces for 2 months to get the bed and breakfast running again, but while she is eager to give it a go, he is adamant that he is leaving as soon as time is up, even though they've got the hots for each other. Of course they do. I didn't especially like this book, but at least I finished it. It has its merits, but it also has its weaknesses. It's predictable, it's cliche, the main characters are kind of bland. She's okay, but not particularly memorable. She didn't have distinct personality traits, at least I didn't think so. And he's moody, jealous, possessive, cranky. He's a type that is so overdone in romances, and he did have a compelling backstory, though, and I mostly stuck around to find out how his problems got resolved. Not his romantic problems, but I wanted to know how did things turn out with his mother and that other guy in town, and I was satisfied with that. This one has a recipe for Grandma Mabel's cinnamon cheesecake at the end. I would love to try that, but I've never made cheesecake before and it sounds awfully tricky, so I don't want to make it. I'd rather just buy it. Book number 55 is Blame It on the Mistletoe by Beth Garrett. This was published in 2020. It's 368 pages long. It's a young adult romance. Holly and Elle, 2 girls who connect via social media, trade places in an attempt to salvage their messy holidays. When I started reading this, I somehow missed that there were two first-person narrators with the chapter's alternating viewpoint, so I was confused. Plus, I didn't immediately realize that the hyper-bombastic stream-of-consciousness style was supposed to represent the thoughts of a teenager, not an adult. I never did figure out how old these girls are supposed to be because I didn't stick around for clarification. I'm gonna guess 16, 17? Probably 17, because I feel like everybody in young adult books is 17. But, after a couple chapters, I just couldn't take anymore. The way that this was written made me feel old and slightly nauseous. It's not because it's YA. The very first book on this list that I read was YA, and I liked it, and it was very readable. It's all about the style of the writing here. It just was too much. It's a Mistletoe book imposter anyway. It was originally titled All I Want for Christmas. So, again, I don't feel that bad. Book number 56 is The Mistletoe Matchmaker by Felicity Hayes McCoy. This was originally published in 2017 in Ireland, but it got its official copyright in 2019. It's 342 pages long. This is Finfarron Peninsula, book number 3. After her Irish grandparents come to Toronto for their first and only visit, granddaughter Cassie, a freelance hairdresser, decides to journey back to Ireland with them to get a taste of her family's homeland during the holidays. It was hard to get into this at first. For the first, 6 or 7 chapters, each chapter introduces a new viewpoint, a new set of names and circumstances, and I felt there was no way I would be able to keep track of all these people. But the main story, with Cassie and her grandmother Pat, was easy enough to latch onto, and I eventually became familiar enough with the broad cast of supporting characters to not feel completely lost. Otherwise, I would have abandoned this. It's not really a romance, although there are relationships. I would have said it was literary fiction, but it's not quite that, literary fiction, that term often sounds kind of fond to me. So, it's just fiction. There are many stories being told here, based in the past and the present, with internal and external conflicts going on. There are some amusing moments. I enjoyed the awkward, aspiring writers club, and the blow-up at the Winter Festival, but the book also had its melancholy chapters. The overall tone here isn't necessarily cheery, and there are a couple characters who just live to be miserable, and seem to want everyone around them to be miserable as well. They're very critical people, they're irritable. Not fun. It wasn't at all what I expected, based on the cover, but it was interesting. Book number 57 is Murder at the Mistletoe Ball by J.D. Griffo. This was published in 2021. It's 408 pages long. It's a mystery. Ferrara family mystery number 6. Estranged mother-daughter pair Alberta and Lisa Marie are reunited after a decade of no communication when Lisa Marie's son goes missing and she needs her mother's help. Based on nothing but the cover, I expected this to be a whimsical, cozy murder mystery. The tagline is "For whom the jingle bell tolls." We've got a little cat there, we've got a elf-on-the-shelf looking guy prone on the snow. It looks fun and festive, but it's not. At least it doesn't seem to be fun and festive from the prologue and the first chapter. That's as far as I got, 19 pages in. I just don't feel inclined to read about the angst and the bitter tension between these two women, especially because it sounds to me like they're both awful. Now, I did read the very last page, and spoiler, it ends happily, but I just don't feel like going on that journey. The idea of reading more than I did just makes me feel like, ugh. It's got recipes at the end, though. Book number 58 is Mistletoe Cottage by Debbie Mazin. This was published in 2016. It's 322 pages long. It's a romance. Harmony Harbor number 1. Sophie, a single mom, returns to the home she left when she got pregnant and gets caught between two feuding families while fighting her attraction to Liam, her old crush. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but I won't get into it. This has some interesting twists, and there are certainly a lot of characters between the DeRossi family and the Gallagher family. Lots of people to dislike, but also ones who become endearing. There was a huge chunk of it where I felt like I was reading a soap opera. It's not necessarily a funny book, but it does have some humor, and the craziest thing was when one character died and became a ghost, and then that ghost keeps intervening in the story. I did not see that coming. It's not a very Christmassy story until the last 50 pages or so, and if you ask me, I think the title Mistletoe Cottage was chosen just so that they could market this as a holiday romance. But that said, this was okay. Book number 59 is Mistletoe Cowboy by Diana Palmer. This was published in 2021. Officially, it's 115 pages long. It was 140 on my Kindle. It's a romance. I just want to say right off the bat, the guy on the cover of the ebook looks nothing like the way the hero is described. They are way off. Parker, a talented horse wrangler who is part crow, connects with a 10-year-old girl and her widowed mother Katie when he assists them with an abused horse. This is a nice little novella. The writing is okay. It's the characters have a tendency to repeat themselves at times. There were a few instances where I thought, didn't you just say that a few pages ago? And the guy is kind of a Gary Stu. Not only is he great with horses and children, and he's hot, and he's muscly, but he's also an astrophysicist who has gotten rich doing top secret work for the government. But I still liked the story, despite some of the preposterous things like that, until 2/3 of the way through, when Katie suddenly began acting stupid. That just... It didn't make sense. I get we needed some conflict here, but come on. Also, the mistletoe angle was pretty much forced in at the end. This is a title that has nothing to do with 99% of the book, but I liked it well enough despite all of that. I liked most of the book. And that is where I ran out of time. I might have been able to squeeze in one more, but I still had editing to do, plus I still needed to come up with an intro and outro, so I called it a day. Overall, I'm pleased with how this went. Many of these stories were festive, and it certainly was a hoot going to the library and checking out 15 books at a time. Here are some statistics. Of the 59 books I checked out, I think I completed 34. That means I bailed on 25, but let's focus on the fact that I read 34 books in 1 month. Of the original 59, there were 5 works of juvenile fiction, 2 young adult books, and 18 mysteries and cozy mysteries, so I did end up with a decent variety. 42 books were technically part of a series, according to their Goodreads listings. Just 10 were published before 2000, while a staggering 21 came out in the last 5 years. And of those 21, I chose not to read or finish 12. Unfortunately, there are 6 books that I wasn't able to get to before my time was up. Here are the e-books: The Trouble with Mistletoe by Jennifer Snow, Cowboy Under the Mistletoe by Linda Goodnight, Mistletoe in Texas by Carrie Lindell, and Mistletoe Cowboy, a different one, by Carolyn Brown. And the 2 physical books I missed because I didn't place a hold on them soon enough are Christmas Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses by Jenny Hale, and Faking Under the Mistletoe by Ashley Shepard. If anyone has read any of these and would like to endorse them in the comments, by all means, share your review. Also, I know there are a ton more books out there with mistletoe in the title. These 66 are a drop in the bucket. Of the 34 I completed, these are the ones I can confidently say I liked, and my enjoyment of them made this project worth it, even when my eyes and my brain were sick of reading. My 5 favorites were Meddling with Mistletoe, Mistletoe: A Christmas Story, The Mistletoe Countess, Mutts and Mistletoe, and The Mischief of the Mistletoe. I hope you had fun watching this, and I appreciate you sticking around through the whole video. It's a long one. I knew it was going to be long. It ended up being even longer than I intended. I do apologize for that. This is a rough time of year to be posting a long video and expecting people to watch the whole thing, but hopefully you were able to watch it while, I don't know, decorating or wrapping presents or something. I don't think I went as crazy doing the Mistletoe project as I did doing the Snowbound project, which might be less entertaining for you, but I'm sure it was nicer for the people who have to live with me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will be back again next Saturday. Thanks for watching.